The campground had been closed for a week when I found the tent. I was the ranger sent out to do the final sweep, lock the gate, make sure no one was still inside, and leave before dark. I worked as a park ranger in a massive wilderness area that didn't get many visitors. Most people went to the more popular parks in the state, which meant we operated with a skeleton crew. My job was mostly maintenance, clearing trails, checking campsites, and occasionally responding to medical calls. I usually worked late shifts, getting off anywhere from midnight to 4 a.m. This happened in early October. We had just closed one of our remote campgrounds for the season. It was too far out to monitor during winter, and the access road would be snowed in by November. I was sent out to do a final sweep, to make sure no one had left gear behind, check for damage, and lock the gate at the trailhead. I drove out in the afternoon. The campground was about 8 miles in, and the last 2 miles had to be done on foot because the road ended at a parking area. When I got there, I saw a tent. It was set up in the far corner of the campground away from the main sites. A small 2-person tent, dark green, blending in with the trees. I walked over and called out. No answer. I knocked on the tent pole. Still nothing. The flap was zipped shut. I couldn't see inside, but I could tell someone had been there recently. There was a cooler next to the tent and a pair of boots outside the entrance. I called out again, louder this time, saying I was a ranger and that the campground was closed. Nothing. I unzipped the flap and looked inside. Empty. A sleeping bag laid out, a backpack in the corner, but no person. I stepped back and looked around. The campground was silent, no one on the trails, no movement in the trees. I radioed back to the station and told them what I found. They said to wait 30 minutes and see if anyone came back. If not, I could leave a notice on the tent and they'd send someone out the next day to clear it. So I waited. I sat on a picnic table near the tent and watched the trees. The sun was starting to drop, and the shadows were getting longer. After about 20 minutes, I heard footsteps. Someone was walking up the trail from the direction I'd come from. I stood up, expecting to see a hiker coming back from a day hike, but when he came into view, I realized he wasn't dressed for hiking. It was a man, maybe in his mid-30s, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, no backpack, no water bottle, no gear at all. He stopped when he saw me. I waved and said I was a ranger. I told him the campground was closed for the season and that he'd need to pack up and leave. He didn't say anything, just stared at me. I asked if the tent was his. He nodded. I asked when he'd arrived. He said 2 days ago. That didn't make sense. The campground had been closed for a week. The gate at the trailhead was locked. I'd unlocked it myself when I drove in. I asked how he got in. He said, I walked. I asked where his car was. He said he didn't have one. I looked at him for a long moment. He wasn't carrying anything. No food, no water, no camping gear outside the tent. If he'd been out here for 2 days, where was everything else? I asked if he was alone. He nodded again. Then he started walking toward the tent. I told him to stop, said he needed to pack up now and leave with me. He didn't stop, just kept walking, slow and deliberate, like he hadn't heard me. I stepped in front of him. He stopped inches from me. His eyes were flat, no expression, no emotion. I asked if he was okay. He said, I'm not leaving. I told him he didn't have a choice. The campground was closed. He said, I know. Then he stepped around me and unzipped the tent. I should have stopped him. I should have called for backup. But I just stood there watching. He crawled inside and zipped the flap shut behind him. I radioed the station again, explained the situation, and said I needed another ranger out there. They said it would take at least 2 hours. I asked if I should wait or leave. They told me to wait, alone, outside the tent, and not to engage no matter what he did. So I did. I sat on the picnic table and watched the tent as the sun went down. He didn't come out, didn't make a sound. After about an hour, I heard something. A zipper. Slow and deliberate. The tent flap opened, but no one came out. I walked over and shined my flashlight inside. The tent was empty. The sleeping bag was gone. The backpack was gone. Even the boots outside the entrance were gone. I walked around the entire campground, checked every trail, checked the parking area. Nothing. When the other ranger arrived 2 hours later, we searched again. The tent was still there, but everything inside was gone. no footprints leading away, no sign of anyone leaving. We packed up the tent and brought it back to the station. I never saw him again. I left that job 6 months later. I still think about it. He said he wasn't leaving. I think he meant it. The house was fully lit when I turned onto the street. By the time I reached the driveway, every light had shut off at once. I'm a delivery driver for a local pizza place. I'm 17 and had been working there a few months. Most nights blur together. Same routes, same customers, same small talk at the door. Weekends are different. We deliver until 2 a.m., so I work late and the roads are empty in a way that makes everything feel farther apart. There's less noise, fewer cars, and no sense that help is nearby if something goes wrong. This was a Saturday night, around 1:30 a.m. We just finished a rush, and I was about to clock out when one more order came in. I remember feeling annoyed more than anything. I figured it'd be my last run of the night. The address was outside town, about 15 minutes out. Not unusual for us, just far enough that it usually meant a quiet drive back. I grabbed the pizza, checked the GPS, and headed out. Rural road, houses spread far apart, long stretches with nothing but trees and open fields. The drive itself was calm, no other cars, just the sound of rain on the windshield and my headlights cutting through the dark. When I turned onto the street, I could see the house from about a quarter mile away. It was set back from the road, 2 stories tall, with lights on in almost every window. I remember thinking it looked unusually bright, like someone had company over late. But as I got closer, maybe 50 feet from the driveway, all the lights went out at once. Not one room at a time, not gradual, every light, instant darkness. I slowed down, confused. My first thought was a power outage, but the streetlights were still on. The neighboring houses were fine, just that one house completely dark. I pulled into the driveway and parked. I sat there for a moment longer than I meant to, looking at the house and trying to decide if I was overthinking it. No movement, no sound. I grabbed the pizza and my phone, got out, and walked up to the front door. I knocked. Nothing. I waited about 30 seconds and knocked again, harder this time. Still nothing. I pulled out my phone and called the number from the order. I heard it ringing inside the house, loud and clear, like it was right behind the door. But no one answered. The ringing stopped and went to voicemail. I stood there, holding the pizza, staring at the door, suddenly aware of how quiet everything around me was. Then I heard footsteps inside, not coming toward the door, moving away from it. Upstairs, maybe. It was hard to tell, but I knew someone was in there. I knocked one more time and called out, said I had their pizza and needed payment. No response. I tried the number again. This time someone picked up. They didn't say anything. I could hear breathing on the line, slow, controlled, like they knew I was listening. I said, "Hello, I'm at your door with your pizza." The breathing continued. Then I heard something that made my stomach drop. Another phone ringing inside the house. A different ringtone, someone else's phone. I asked if everything was okay. The line went dead. I stepped back from the door and looked up at the windows. All dark, but I had the unmistakable feeling that someone was watching me from inside. That's when I heard a door open on the side of the house. Not the front door, a side door. I could hear it creak. Then a man's voice came from the darkness, calm, flat, almost rehearsed. "Come around back, door's stuck." That was the moment I realized I couldn't leave normally anymore. If I walked to the side of the house, I'd be out of sight of the street, away from my car, with no one able to see me. I didn't move. Something about the voice felt wrong, too controlled, like it was meant to sound normal. I said, "I can just leave it here." "No," the voice said. "Bring it around back." I told him I needed payment first. There was a pause. Then I heard the side door close, slow and deliberate. Footsteps started inside the house again, moving toward the front. I didn't wait to see what happened next. I dropped the pizza on the porch and walked fast back to my car, forcing myself not to run. As I opened the door, I heard the front door unlock. I got in, started the engine, and backed out immediately. In my rearview mirror, I saw the front door open. No one came out. It just stayed open, a black rectangle in the dark. I drove straight back to the shop and told my manager what happened. He tried calling the number from the order. It rang, no answer. He tried again an hour later. The number was disconnected. We looked up the address. The house existed, but according to county records, it had been vacant for 2 years. No one had lived there since the previous owner died. I still work there. I've driven past that street a few times since then. The house is still dark. The car had been abandoned for minutes when I pulled in. The driver's door was open, the keys were still in the ignition, and the coffee in the cup holder was still steaming. I was driving through Nebraska on my way to see family in Iowa. It was late, around 11 p.m., and I'd already been on the road for 6 hours. I needed to stretch my legs, so I pulled off at the next rest stop. The parking lot was almost empty. Just one other car, a sedan parked under a light near the restrooms. The driver's side door was wide open. I parked a few spaces away and got out. As I walked past the sedan, I noticed the interior light was on. The keys were still in the ignition. The engine was off. I stopped and looked around. No one was nearby. The restrooms were about 50 feet away, doors closed. I called out, "Hello? You okay?" No answer. I walked closer to the car and looked inside. A purse sat on the passenger seat. A phone was plugged into the charger. A coffee cup sat in the center console, steam still rising from it. Whoever had been driving this car had just been here. I looked toward the restrooms again. Still no movement. I pulled out my phone and thought about calling someone, but I wasn't sure what I'd even say. A car with the door open? Maybe they just ran inside and forgot to close it. But the keys in the ignition bothered me. I walked over to the restrooms and pushed open the women's door slightly, calling out again. No response. I checked the men's room, empty. I went back to the car, still open, still lit, still no one around. That's when I noticed something on the ground near the driver's seat. A shoe, a woman's sneaker, just one. I bent down and looked under the car. Nothing. I stood up and scanned the rest stop again. The parking lot, the picnic area beyond the restrooms, the tree line past that. Nothing moved. That was the moment I should have left. Instead, I got back in my car and called 911. I told them what I'd found. They said they'd send someone out and asked me to stay and wait. That was the point of no return. Once I agreed to wait, I couldn't just leave without explaining myself. I was committed to staying in a place where someone had vanished minutes earlier. I locked my doors and watched the sedan. About 10 minutes passed. Then I saw headlights pulling into the rest stop. But it wasn't a police car. It was a pickup truck, dark colored. It pulled in slowly and parked on the far side of the lot, away from the lights. The engine turned off. No one got out. My phone was still in my hand, 911 on the line. The dispatcher asked if the police had arrived yet. I said no, but another vehicle had just pulled in. She told me to stay in my car and keep the doors locked. The pickup sat there for another minute. Then the driver's side door opened. A man stepped out, tall, wearing a jacket. He didn't walk toward the restrooms or the vending machines. He walked straight to the sedan. I watched as he circled it once, looking inside. Then he reached in and grabbed the purse from the passenger seat. I told the dispatcher exactly what I was seeing. She said the police were 5 minutes out. The man walked back to his truck, got in, and started the engine. Then he turned and drove slowly toward my car. I put my car in reverse, ready to back out. He stopped about 20 feet away, just sat there, headlights aimed directly at me. I couldn't see inside his truck because of the glare. We stayed like that for what felt like forever, probably 30 seconds. Then he reversed, turned around, and drove out of the rest stop. I tried to get his license plate, but it was too dark, and he was already gone. The police arrived a few minutes later. I told them everything: the sedan, the shoe, the man in the pickup. They searched the area, found the car, the keys, the phone, ran the plates. The sedan had been reported stolen 3 hours earlier from a gas station 2 towns over. They never found the driver. They never found the man in the pickup. The shoe was sent to a lab, but I never heard if they found anything. I still think about it. Why the car was left like that. Why the door was open. Why there was only one shoe, and why that man came back. I don't stop at rest stops anymore. Not at night, not alone.